I just, in defense of the TSA, I got to tell you some good TSA stories because we were just telling bad TSA stories, and it's not because I'm getting on an airplane tomorrow. My experience has been that they're always. I've never had a TSA agent be anything less than professional with me, although I just don't like the process. And I told the story actually on the air. The last time I flew, the woman who was checking IDs, as you get into the line, the TSA agent who was checking IDs was wearing I think it's pronounced hijab, the Muslim scarf. And I thought, how cool is that? I mean, God forbid Sarah Palin or, Michelle Bachmann gets in this line. It'll turn into an international incident. But it's like this, it's a great thing. There was a TSA agent in Portland who one day I was sitting in a restaurant. He came over and said hi and we sat down. We talked for quite a while. He was a Sikh, with the whole turban thing. And he was a TSA agent. And I don't like getting x-rays. I don't want to get microwaves or millimeter waves or whatever you want to call them. I don't think they're necessary. I don't think that we should be a nation of sheep and frightened people. I realize George W. Bush and Dick Cheney and Don Rumsfeld are frightened little men, and they inflicted that fear, that deep, deep fear on the rest of us. I realize that there is a large portion of America who are basically, at their core, just frightened people, and that Fox News panders to them and every day teaches them 100 more ways to be frightened, and so does right-wing talk radio. But I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid. In fact, I would say since 9/11, if we were to go back to the way it was in the 80s, and I remember this well. I mean, Louise and I started a travel agency in 83. We sold it off in 86. I've traveled all over the world. We used to get, they were called 75 ADs. You could travel anywhere you wanted for 25% of the fare. And I did a lot of that. And there were all these free trips and fam trips and comp trips and things. And I used to fly a lot in the 70s. And in the 70s, you'd walk up to the counter, buy your ticket. You could pay with cash. They didn't even ask you for ID. In fact, a friend of mine this was in the late 70s. Friend of mine in New York owned a wholesale business, and he required all of his customers, if they wanted to buy from him, they had to fly in on his name so he'd get frequent flyer points for it. And no, I'm serious. And there was a handicapped basketball team that came to him and said, will you make a donation to us? He knew the guy who ran the program. Will you make a donation to us? And he said, sure, I'll pay for your flight out to the West Coast for the whole team if you all fly as me. And there was like 14 of this, of one person on this plane, right? All on the same frequent flyer number. Those were the days, right? But you didn't have to go through security. There was no security. The security basically was all the people on the plane looking out for each other. And I am convinced since 9/11, you look at what happened with that plane in Pennsylvania. That plane did not go beyond middle of Pennsylvania. Yeah, I know there's theories that we shot it down. I don't think so. I think that the people on the plane took those terrorists down. And I certainly believe that since then, I don't even need to believe it. The historical record is there. It's in the news. There was a flight attendant who had been on some kind of medication, and she went, Bugs Bunny on us, bouncing off the walls, wacko, and literally the passengers dragged her down and held her until somebody could take care of it. The flight attendant went nuts. There's been dozens of passengers who have had, in most cases, actually, it's been people who, on international flights, who are taking this new anti-malarial medication, which I took once on one of my trips to Africa, and I'll tell you, it's a bad trip, this stuff. You get these wild nightmares and just feelings of panic, and just this laramide, I think it's called, or something like that. There's a new anti-malaria drug that has these, it makes you crazy as a side effect. And people, and particularly if they mix it with a sleeping pill or it's a long flight and they take a nap or something, and then they wake up from one of these wild dreams and they suddenly think that they're not in an airplane anymore, that they're Noah and they're in the middle of a whale or something, or they just go nuts. And who takes them out? It's not the air marshals. It's the other passengers. I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid to get on an airplane in America. I'm not afraid to get on a bus. I'm not afraid to get on a train. If they were to blow up an airplane every single day, 350 people die every single day, blowing up an airplane. Every day in America. That's fewer than the number of people who die from smoking. Do you see people say, I'm afraid to touch a cigarette, I'm not going to... Come on. I think, frankly, it's smaller than the number of people who are dying from high fructose corn syrup. It's probably smaller than the number of people who are dying from alcohol abuse. Well, it has to be. There's 50,000 people a year who die from alcohol abuse. You get 10,000 people a year who die in car accidents. That's more than a plane a day. Are you afraid to get in your car? I'm not. And yet the risk of, the ride to the airport tomorrow is going to be the most dangerous part of my trip. And that would be even if there was no airport security. So, the TSA people, they're just, you got a job. I mean, it's just people who are pleased to have a job, and it's a decent job with good wages and a decent benefit package. God bless them. But they're in a system. They've got a job in a system that is unnecessary and largely broken. So you have people who have been through the vetting process to be essentially police officers and who have the training and the temperament for it. Let's put them on the streets. Let's take them out of the airports and bring back Bill Clinton's 100,000 cops on the streets. And because I tell you, you know that neighborhood where the 3 women were held in that house for 10 years? If that neighborhood had had community policing, where there was a cop walking the street every single day or every other day, those women would not have been held there for 10 years. You know that as well as I do. We no longer, we just need to say we're not the land of the frightened and the home of the cowards. We are the land of the free and the home of the brave. And we don't need Chertoff X-ray porno scanners and gropings at the airport, and we do need community policing.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 866-987-THOM.
We don't need mutant Ninja Turtle cops and SWAT teams and giant machines with horrible noise things on. We need just cops on the beat. Put the TSA out in the streets.